We are trying to create video tools for people doing all kinds of work. And all the people doing that kind of work, you're having to do a lot more with a lot more footage and a lot less time now. So we're really trying to figure out all the friction points, the pain points, and remove all that tedium so that you can just get into the storytelling. I feel like more and more we're just, as video editors, having to do media management or troubleshooting or technical things, when really we got into video editing because we like storytelling. So we're constantly just trying to recenter back on that by providing tools that allow you to do that.
So it sounds like you're focusing on everything that's not related to editing that is necessary to get done before editing can occur.
Yeah, I'd say that's part of it. We have media intelligence and search, which really allows you to find footage when you need it. So a lot of people have told us it doesn't stop them from watching all their footage, but it helps them to find things they didn't know they had while they're editing. And then Generative Extend allows you to add a few more frames, so that's solving a problem during the edit as well. So we're kind of looking at the whole process and helping people just any point where you are taken out of the story while you're making it, or a viewer would get taken out of the story while they're watching it, we want to improve that.
I should mention that Media Intelligence is a new feature which you announced, and Generative Extend is a new feature. What else is new?
Yeah, we added Caption Translation, so you can translate captions inside of Premiere Pro in 27 languages. We heard a huge feature request after we released text-based editing. People wanted translation. They were round-tripping outside of Premiere Pro, and now you can do it inside of Premiere. And we also completely rewrote our color pipeline, so we have brand new color management in Premiere too.
Now, what does that mean in English?
It means one thing is when you shoot in RAW or log, you can switch on a setting so that when you drop it into your timeline, nearly any camera, it'll automatically do the transform for you.
Well, how does it know what transform to perform?
It's all based on math. So there's metadata embedded with all these raw and log clips that says this was recorded with Sony S-Log or whatever else. And Premiere knows how to read that, and we work very closely with the camera manufacturers to get that math. So it's just a mathematical transform from the log space to Rec 709 or HDR to view it. So we're just doing that in the product now. And one of the benefits to that, aside from not having to manage LUTs, although if you love LUTs, you can still do that, all that transform happens in such a way in the pipeline where you're able to do your corrections in that vast color space before it gets clamped down to the display.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, I don't need to add a camera LUT anymore.
Correct.
Because Premiere does that automatically. Mm-hmm. But I would use a LUT if I wanted to achieve a particular look after that initial transform is complete.
Yeah, you can certainly, you can still use the camera LUTs. You can use the creative LUTs to achieve a look. And again, instead of having a lot of that original color and luminance clamped down in the color pipeline, your corrections, your LUTs are applied before that clamp happens, so you get access to a much wider range of colors and luminosity.
One of the things I was talking about a year ago when I was interviewing Francis Crossman is as Adobe continues to implement AI, how much of that AI is safe for us to use? How is it trained? And how are you guaranteeing the security of what the creator creates?
Yeah, that's been something that we've had a very vast dialogue on for the last couple of years because it's a big question. There's a lot of open questions, but what I can tell you is Adobe Firefly, which is Adobe's AI, generative AI models, they're all designed to be commercially safe, which means they're trained only on things that we have permission to train on, licensed content, public domain, things like that. That's really important to customers because they know that they're going to create things that are commercially safe or not stealing anyone's work. So we've had a lot of conversations about that. And I think that when we're bringing generative AI into Premiere Pro, we're thinking about the commercial safety, but also the application within the product. So that's why we brought Generative Extend in first, because it solves a very specific problem, but it's also tiny little pieces. If you see our demos of it, we're generating like 10 frames, because an extra beat is all you need. You can generate up to 2 seconds of video or 10 seconds of audio, but it's not meant to completely rewrite history.
But the generative demo that I've seen, the Generative Extend is brilliant. I really love it. But all the demos have a very flat background, a motorcyclist against a blue sky. So does that mean that I have to have very specific shots that I can extend? Because it implies that if the background is at all busy or variegated, it's not going to work.
It works quite well with busy backgrounds. I will tell you right now and today, at this moment, it could be different in a week by the time people see this. Firefly does have a little bit of trouble with, crowds, or I know Generative Extend will have issues with a lot of context change in the shot. Just logically, it tries to extend based on the last 8 or 9 frames that you feed it. So it can't possibly know, if it doesn't have it there, what's supposed to come next.
If I've got a giant pan going on, it doesn't know how to continue the pan.
It'll continue the pan as it was, but if you know in real life there was a sign there, then it's not going to generate that. And often that's something that you want. You don't want that. But sometimes people will have a camera that goes from this room to this room, and it doesn't know what's going to be in that room. So it might hallucinate something. But the busy backgrounds, a lot of them actually, highly detailed shots do work. We have an example with a lot of colorful flags in the wind and a lot of different colors and luminosity, and it extends extremely well as close-ups of food on plates and things like that. I encourage people to try it. Try it and see where it works and where it doesn't. Another
program that some people may have heard of is After Effects. What have you done with After Effects?
Yeah, we've had some big changes there. We have High Performance Preview Playback. And so what that means is you can play back your comp and you don't have to continually RAM preview it. It will play back smoothly, which is amazing because RAM preview is such a bummer. We also have HDR playback, so you can work in HDR in After Effects, as well as some 3D workflow updates.
With the issue of AI, and this is not an Adobe issue, but you would be aware of it, we still can't achieve copyright on AI-generated work. Is that still a true statement?
I think that's true. It's Adobe's opinion that if you generate something, then you own it, but there's still open legislation around the idea of copyright. There's open cases. It's a really complex issue. And so we need to stay very closely, paying attention to that because it's going to change constantly.
So just to be clear, we can create generative images, whether it's a Generative Extend or something in Firefly, and it's commercially safe. But commercially safe is not the same thing as copyrightable.
Yeah.
I always get those two confused.
Yeah, it's basically you're generating something and it's not based on anyone's work that hasn't consented to it versus owning that and being able to copyright it, which is a very specific legal term to copyright something.
One of the challenges that you have in your position is trying to help direct the product for future months and, more importantly, future years. I'm not going to ask you to tell me where Premiere is going for the next 6 months, although I'm happy to listen should you share it. But what trends are you watching? What do we need to pay attention to?
Doing more with less. We're seeing a lot of things, a lot of feature requests that really have roots in things that people could do originally in TikTok or Instagram Reels, things like that. A big one being I really wish that I didn't have to go to After Effects to do simple rotoscoping. So at Adobe Max in October, we had an early preview of work we're doing with object selection from that regard, which will be in Premiere Pro at some point in the coming months. So that, as well as just continuing to improve the ability to find what you're looking for faster with these piles and piles of media, and then go back to the library that you already have, because there's so much stuff that you can reuse, and it often gets locked away in a project. So I think that we'll continue to work on media intelligence as well as that, but I think the future also has a lot of interesting things in the generative AI works, just overall as an industry. I don't think we've landed on exactly how we want generative AI to be part of our work, and I think that's going to be a vast change for everyone.
One of the concerns that I've got is as tools like Premiere get easier to use, and it gets easier every year, and I can understand why you're doing that. It's called the democratization of the tools. Is that the skills of a craft editor become less and less desirable because we don't need to know what we needed to know 5 years ago, 10 years ago, which has two ramifications. One, it opens up the market for Adobe, which is wonderful and allows more people to use Premiere, which is wonderful, but it makes it harder for craft editors to earn a living because the competition is greater. Now, this is not a problem that Adobe can solve, But how do you see the market evolving? And where is the craft editor going? And it's more of a philosophical question, not a product question.
Yeah, I would disagree that Premiere is getting easier to learn. I think that those of us that have been in the product for a long time might think that it is, but it's actually, if you look at it objectively, which I do often, it's like, wow, this is actually a dense product. So we try to add more quick things that apply both to newer people, so they can go, oh, I can click there, go to the essential sound panel, and then I know what I'm supposed to use, whereas craft editors can use that to just as a shortcut because they know they're going to go use the loudness matching. But on a broader respect, I think that I'm seeing with younger people, there's a stronger desire to be multi-hyphenates, to want to be a video editor and instead of just a specific editor. And I think broadly, the democratization, not just of these pro tools, but also of video in general, being able to shoot video and really dive into the timing and pacing of it for online video is influencing people's desire to want to use that for storytelling on top of their other interests.
Are you seeing that content creators, especially in social media, are moving to Premiere, or are they moving to Rush?
Oh, content creators are largely on Premiere Pro, yeah. We're seeing a ton of people that really want to. They get started using some tools maybe that they have their hands on, consumer tools, and then they want to do a little bit more because they hit the limits of those tools. So they're jumping into Premiere Pro because they want the full experience, because people still do desire to have the craft skills, whether they express it that way or not. They really want that. And I even I spend time with students sometimes in film school, and I'm like, these are a different kind of young people that actually do want to be specialists. So I think that there is somewhat a concern about the loss of the craft, but then I go and I talk to people and I'm like, it's just expressing itself a little bit differently.
For people that haven't yet worked with Premiere, clearly everybody on the planet has heard of Adobe, but hasn't worked with Premiere. What are the key features or the key benefits that Premiere provides that you would want them to know?
I would say one thing that we do right with Premiere Pro is that it's a very flexible tool. Of course, that can also mean that you can get yourself into a little bit of a bind because you can throw anything at it and it'll try to work with it. But I find that to be really great because you don't have to learn how to transcode. You don't have to learn all these complex tools to be able to do basic color correction or to do audio mixing. We provide a lot of surfaces that give you hints for where you're supposed to click next. And we also have a vast array of training on adobevideotraining.com, so you can get started there as well as the Learn panel, so you can get up to speed there. But for people that want to get into video editing or want to try Premiere Pro, we are constantly updating the performance playback to match all of these new GPUs and all these new formats. So ultimately, no matter what kind of editor, no matter what kind of content, there is something for you, and it'll just speed things up, whether it's text-based editing, media intelligence, or generative AI. There's something to speed up your work so you can do more, you can tell your story, or you can go home to your kids a little earlier.
Kylee, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.